course, and we asked about Indonesian example. So I'll start first here. Myself, I work as a consultant, as an economist, for governmental agencies, for ministries, for European Commission, and as a company, Ecoris is one of its values, besides we have to make profit, of course, like any company, we discussed that yesterday. The drive, the why question, I think, is that we believe we are contributing something to improving the world. It's a very abstract thing, but every project that we do, there is a link on it will make society better at the local scale or at the global scale. And that is kind of a value which a lot of employees consider a strong thing to be willing to join this company. And of course it's changed over time, so we have to work on that. That's one important driver for me. Secondly, I am a father. I have 3 beautiful young daughters, and I want a beautiful world for them and for other future generations. So in a way, what can I do in my work or in my private life that contributes to making the future as bright as my youth used to be? Because I had a great youth. I had a good grown-up period. Thirdly, I'm a church member. I'm a member of a Protestant church in Rotterdam, which is kind of civil society. Whether it's religion or whether it's something else, but to that community there is a joint drive of doing something for the local environment, the society in my part of Rotterdam. And I thought of the term of rentmeesterschap. I don't know what it's called in English. Stewardship. Stewardship. So we as residents on Earth have a responsibility to take care of the Earth, but of each other, and of the poor and the weak and the old and anybody who is less gifted than me. So there is a responsibility beyond myself. And fourthly, I'm a citizen of the Netherlands. I'm an included person, let's say. And I see society is changing and challenged by outside drivers, and we have to change society. And I think my position is part about the Netherlands situation and changes that are needed. And these are difficult to achieve. So how do we deal with uncertainties, risk, with problems, with the difficult, painful things we need to do to adapt to these changes? So that's background to my presentation. As I mentioned, Dutch, and it's not just my business perspective, but my personal perspective of the Dutch society. And hopefully for the Indonesian participants it gives some understanding of my interpretation of that society. And then I think the India story fits quite well because it links to some of these elements in the Indonesian. First of all, the government is ours. Wat?
Zal ik even voor je tappen?
Oh nee, I ook niet. It's our government. Wednesday we could vote. And we are, the government is not there for the sake of themselves. If they would, and if we would not accept the government, this thing would fall apart. We saw the Ukraine falling apart because the state own, the interests of the own people were not matched in the population's interests. And then you get Syria, or you get Ukraine, or you get big problems. So there must be a reward, a benefit of having this government. And in the Netherlands, we have always a coalition government. We have got like 12 or 15 political parties at the national level, and also at local level many parties. Nobody has a majority. There's always a coalition, there's always an agreement between parties that have different ideals, and they have to negotiate and find some middle way. So we will never have extreme policies in our country. We also will never have the policies that you voted for, because always your party that you chose has to give in to somebody else. So are you happy with that? You can vote somebody else, it will happen again. You will be still unhappy. So we have to understand and accept it. Secondly, some tasks are government tasks. if you talk about civil society and social structure and handing over responsibilities from government to others, some tasks, I think, cannot be handed over to somebody else. They are to be done by the state, whatever way. And the monopoly of violence, police, defense, army, is something that you don't want to be under a civil society agency which you cannot control anymore. It should be there. The same holds, I think, for paying taxes. Belastingdienst, the tax agency of the Netherlands. They are charging institutes, individuals, for funds to do the governmental tasks. And I think if a private or a non-government agency would do that, it's a bit strange. It's a bit like, who are you to decide about my tax money? Thirdly, the state is the arbiter and also the regulator. They set the framework rules and ensure they are followed. And if somebody is out of that scheme, there is an arbiter to assess that. And also that's something that you don't want somebody else to do. And there you see, for instance, when our perspective is looking at Russia or Ukraine or somewhere else, where they have a different framework, we have our view of how this should look like. And it will be different in another country. But this system is something we should abide to, because that's why it makes society work. Apart from these kind of obvious state things, some other tasks are done by the state, because they are too big to fail. I think Indonesian people also understand this, and Netherlands as a country which is vulnerable to things. Do we want to have risks covered by the private sector or by the civil society, or do we think it should be done centrally and nationally? And of course, we talk about waterschap, and there is of course a civil involvement, but in a way we said the government is responsible. Or what about this one? The banking sector. Banks are private companies. They are borrowing and have money, and that's a mechanism to make society work. But at the bank crisis, they were collapsing, and what happened? We didn't let them collapse, like any company would go bankrupt. Sorry for you. No, the government interfered. We injected 50 or 100 billion euros to get the bank alive, to prevent them falling. Because there was a common belief that if we would fall, society would fall apart. And so the government took over some tasks which were done by the private sector, and now try to hand them back, and that's of course a gradual process. Also, some tasks are organized centrally and also with state interference because they are so big and so complex and so expensive. Study hospital has high entry costs, and also it has a high risk or high. The impact of failure is very big, so you want to have a common minimum level and standards and quality to be met. You want to regulate it. You want to interfere in how it's organized. Even though maybe part can be done privately, still the state wants to have a role there. And I think in our country as a Rhineland model, we call it. So the German, Dutch, Western model is a model where state and private sector are doing this together, whereas in the Anglo-Saxon model, much more is handed over to the private sector. We chose for a model of a kind of controlled private involvement. So the state is still managing or steering kind of the boundaries. However, the world is not static. As a government, things were invented to help improve society. It was at some point in time believed to do something useful because of circumstances at that time. But that time is not there anymore. The time has changed. The retirement law, it was in 1956 or something. People could get retired at 65 and get an allowance from the state to have some years of rest after your working life, let's say. But people at that time they were maximum age 68 or something. And so you have 3 years of retirement. Nowadays people get 80. So you have to get a lot of public money to get the funds. So that is something which is, it requires adaptation. But in our daily life, past decisions are gradually taken over as an asset. I have the right to retire by 65. I have the right as a student for a free travel card. I have the right for free school books. I have the right that my museum is subsidized and I can enter for free. All these things which were introduced in the past are gradually transferred as being a right. I have the right to have that. Because my father had it, and my grandfather had it. Why am I not having the right? And we see, I think people see the need for change because the rights are very costly. But am I going to blame for that? Please let others blame, not me. And so the tension between accepting the general notion versus the personal impact that something has. So, social structure, if that is the word that we try to follow. I understand the word as society, the non-institutionalized part of our community, taking over tasks that are in the past, in our welfare state, organized by the government. And if we can hand it back to society as the community of the people of the country, we allow freedom, we allow own initiatives, we lower cost, of course, that's one of the arguments why it's being promoted. But you need to understand it has to be flexible, you have to deal with unknowns. And I give some examples of that. This is one example of unknown. You never tell much more about this picture, but what's happening right now in the Netherlands is that a lot of tasks are being handed over from the central government, which is on the left at the top. This is the Tweede Kamer, the parliament, to the local government. This is the City Hall of Rotterdam, where I live. So there's people who all do this in the evening besides another job, who have not education or experience or something. They are much less professional, and they now give responsibility to a lot of tasks. Can they do that? We have to see what happening is kind of throwing over the wall a lot of tasks and some money. Not so much money, but some money, okay? And then, yeah, we have to find out in the coming years whether it will fail, and which tasks are then tracked back to the state or taken over by others, because there will be failures. And we can blame people for that, but it doesn't solve the problem. So how do we deal with that? This is a picture from a daycare in Leeuwarden. And in Leeuwarden they had daycare organized by volunteers. We heard a story about this Israel example yesterday. This was kind of like that. People, they agreed with some families and some local people to organize daycare and to have volunteers running it. So children could go there for free. And they followed all the rules. All the safety and things that everything was needed was followed by them. And it worked well. Everybody was happy, and all people with low income could still use it, so no problem. But then the state came and said, thou shalt have formal contracts, and staff is paid, and they have a diploma of this and this. And then it fell apart. The initiative of the local community was torn down by the formal rules of the state. So, are we happy or sad? There was a reason, but there was also an impact. This is another example. This is Maurice de Hond. He's a famous Dutch person with a lot of creative ideas. And he invented the iPad school. That is a new school concept where you use the iPad instead of books, and where the way of teaching children was more interactive and creative and new and fresh. And his idea was that it would bring young, new, educated people with a much more modern mind to society, who would be able to deal with future interaction and communication and how society would work. So he wanted to set up a school like that, and he had money for that, so he's an investor, he has that money. And even parents were also interested and said, yeah, great, my kid can go to that school. But the state said, well, should we do that? Should we allow that? Because we have formal tests and checks, and we have regulations at schools, and we must make sure that all children at 12 have learned that and that. So we're not sure whether this concept is going to achieve that. Should we forbid it because it's not according to the formal rules? Or should we allow it, but maybe then 100 children will get lost because they will have bad education and we have to repair it later, they are the victims? Or should we put in checks every year and every month and reports? And there was a struggle about that. How freedom, how willing to experiment are we? Because experimentation means uncertainty of the outcome. We also know that even if we have rules, things can go wrong severely. Let the Dutch people know this. This is the Hofnarretje. It's a daycare in Amsterdam, and there was a guy called Robert M. who sexually abused more than 50 children between 0 and 4. There was a massive media attention. Of course, everybody is very shocked about this. And the person who worked there, he had a degree. He had all the tests done. He was following every check that was in the system was followed, and still it could happen. So of course the guy goes to jail, and everybody's very angry. And if he would be on the street, he would be torn apart almost. I think society is very angry with the person. But in the meantime, the response of government was how to prevent this. More rules, more cameras, more forms, more staff to control each other, like a Big Brother system, and more controls. And all other daycares in the whole country had to redo their safety and security schemes. It's all institutionalized response. But there will always be failure. This was a very severe and extreme failure, and there may be much more smaller failures during every day, which we have to live with. And if we want less governments, Big Brother government finding things, and we want more the civil society to organize itself, we must also accept that there will always be failures and mistakes and people who have bad intentions. How much can we accept? Because it's my daughter who's there, maybe, yeah? So that's very difficult. And then you can talk about crime and fraud and other problems, which are maybe less personal, but also still societal failures. And then how do we live with that? This is the apartment of Benno L. Benno L was a swimming teacher who also did some bad things with children in the swimming pool. And he was punished for that. He went to jail. And he, according to the laws that we have, he had to be, I don't know how many years in jail. And then his penalty was ended, as the law says. So after that, you're a free man. You had your punishment, and then you can go back to society. Or not. Because the people in society still don't like you. They would like you to go to the moon, preferably. So what do? This person is given a second chance by the government, but not by society. Where does he have to live? Can he find a new job? Maybe not in the swimming pool or elsewhere, or are we not willing to do that? So how forgiveness are we towards people who made failures? Last one on this paper. If we talk about less government and more civil society, own responsibility, care for each other, ourselves, without institutionalization, not everybody has the same capabilities and skills and assets to do this. I was thinking much about that line story about her brother. Maybe I don't know whether you read that, but she explains, summarizing it maybe too bluntly, that her mother took care of her brother because he couldn't take care of himself. And she did it with love and care and really from the heart. But besides, of course, that is great for the mother to do that. For the brother, it also meant, and maybe I'm saying it wrong, but just to try to use it as an example, that he was limited in his own freedom, his own development, because he was under the dominance, as was used yesterday, of his mother. Now, society or government offering institutionalized care took some tasks from the mother to the government, but it also had a gain, it was a positive side effect of more freedom or more own development chances for the brother.
Own identity.
Oh, yeah, okay. So there was a positive. Government is negative. It's also, there was a reason of doing that. A positive thing for, I think, government taking up some social tasks. And if we're going to hand back tasks from government to the civil society, how can we not get back into the Verzuilingsperiod, the period that we were also feeling imprisoned by our society? We want to have the good things of society, but also the good things of our government systems. So this is a, I don't know the answer right now, but
I was hoping for the answer actually.
yeah, no, it's there. I thought yesterday it's the golden
Well, it's on the next slide, right?
Yeah, that's
The next slide, yes.
Last slide is about my own work.
Oh, that's a big
It's boring, yeah, it's very boring. But I work as a consultant in the field of transport, logistics, mobility. And a new theme in our field from the past years is what is called behavioral economics. In the past, if there was a traffic jam, the minister could call us, please calculate whether a new road is feasible and make a new road. Or an extra lane, or a train connection, or whatever. And we spend some billions of euros for it, and then the traffic jam is gone, and we're all happy, and a few years later we have to do it again, but that's no problem. And now we have no money for new roads, and we also have no space, and also have the rugstreeppad animal walking around. We don't want it to be killed, so there's a lot of reasons not want to build new roads. So within the given assets that we have, roads, railways, waterways, whatever, we must try to optimize. And as a liberal country, we don't want to force people, you should drive at 7 to your work, you at 8 to your work. Everybody is free to do that. But we want to incentivize, we want to give hints or attractive blockages. We want to motivate people to choose individual choices which are then societally optimal. And youth optimal to go home to work at 8, youth optimal to go at 8. Everybody has their own optimum, but the joint optimum is not a society optimum. So how can we play with that and trigger people to maybe take a train once in a while, or maybe work home at a day, or maybe this is on the right side, it's called Spitsmijnen. So how can we motivate people to avoid the congestion rush hour with some incentives? Which do not have to be expensive, they can be cheap or simple incentives. You get points for every minute you go to your work later, and then you can have a free chocolate bar from Albert Heijn or something. It's not really, it doesn't have to be big things, but it has to be stimulated. How can we motivate that? And the other one with shipping is about environmental impacts of transport sector. How can we make that greener? How can we incentivize the use of more sustainable ways of mobility? Yeah, that's the kind of job that we, as the chorus in my company, we try to work on and develop possibilities. And the answer always is there is no one answer. I'm sorry about that. Like it's the same in any other sector. But it's you look at the package, and the government is there now as the one who is developing the package, from regulations into incentivizing and promoting and doing other tasks. But since society can also take that package. So you as an employer or as an organization can also think of how can I motivate my employees to do things which are good to society. That's, yeah.
Thank you, Johan. I would like to ask first Eddie, what do we need to do something or organize something with Nadia? Or how?
Well, Dr. Adrian here said that her fever is quite high, 39 something. So, but she has her medicines, but she's running out of medicine. So, Dr. Adrian advised us to get her to the doctor to get more medicines.
Okay.
He will accompany Nadia, and if Pak Hans is kind enough to bring them to the doctor.
Then first we have to go to the reception to be
I don't think she can make it.
Pardon?
I I don't think she can make it.
No, we have to make,
Yes,
to go to
I
the
think,
reception, because those people have to make an appointment with the general practitioner here in the village.
Yes, I think she can go now. To the
Oh, she can
doctor.
go now?
Yes.
Maar kan ze niet naar de huisartspost of zo?
Ja, er is hier, het schijnt hier een huisarts te zijn, maar dan moet je een afspraak mee maken. En dan moet iemand haar persoonlijke gegevens doorgeven aan de receptie. Want de receptie, om een afspraak te kunnen maken, moet die gegevens al telefonisch doorgeven.
Oké.
And is a general practitioner good? Because we also have tropical doctors. Maybe that's better.
Ja,
Yeah, last week before she left Jakarta, she was already positive for typhoid.
Okay.
So the result, it's just that she's too tired, and that's why her fever has gone up. But she needs the medicine,
Of course.
so she has to go to the doctor to get the additional medicine for the typhoid.
Yeah.
And you get it by telephone. Sometimes if I call my doctor, then I can say, can I get this? And then you talk a lot, and then he says, go to the pharmacy immediately, because you don't get it as a doctor yourself, you get it at the pharmacy.
I see.
Doctor has to say to the pharmacy to give the medicine. If you can convince the doctor by telephone already, it saves
Maybe,
you.
Yeah, the other
because
kind of convince his colleague.
Dr. Adrian is a medical doctor, maybe if he can talk to the doctor here to get an additional, because he cannot prescribe medicines.
No.
Not, oh, no.
you can do that.
I think
Now goes to the reception to find out who the doctor is and who the further proceeding.
You could also write a
oh
prescription,
no, I
right?
cannot.
Okay. You're not allowed in the Netherlands.
Yes.
No.
Well, let's try to get the medicine. If we need to do something more, then I'll come back to you. Yeah, let's go.
Okay. Are there any questions? Maybe we
Yes,
can
okay.
discuss with afterwards, but after the presentation of Irina, but are there any specific questions?
Just a quick one. Very from the book. The one where you were talking about